This morning is from Paul's letter to the Philippians, the first chapter, verses 18 to 27. What does it matter? Just this, that Christ is proclaimed in every way, whether out of false motives or true, and in that I rejoice. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice. For I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. It is my eager expectation and hope that I will not be put to shame in any way, but that by my speaking with all boldness, Christ will be exalted now as always in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, living is Christ, and dying is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, and I do not know which I prefer. I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, so that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. Since I am convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with all of you for your progress and joy in faith, so that I may share abundantly in your boasting in Christ Jesus when I come to you again. Only live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent and hear about you, I will know that you are standing firm in one spirit, striving side by side with one mind for the faith of the gospel. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Bill was worried about Susie. She had not been feeling well for several days, and she seemed to be getting worse. At first, she was sure it was just a cold, but now they were not so sure. Of course, they hoped it wasn't the coronavirus because they had already lost a friend to that terrible disease when their friend Tom died and left behind his son, Billy. Susie was in good health, but she was in her late 70s and had some risk factors. They'd both been tested for COVID on Saturday, the day before, and they expected the results on the next day, Monday morning. So Bill asked Susie what she wanted to do as she settled down for the evening. Did she want to bring him the TV in the bedroom, or did she want to come out and lie down on the couch in the living room? He breathed a sigh of relief when she said she wanted to just stay in bed and read a little. It was Sunday night and there was a football game on that he wanted to watch. But if they had to share the TV, he would have to watch one of her shows like reruns of Murder, She Wrote. He enjoyed all those old shows too, but he grew up in Buffalo and he wanted to watch the Buffalo Bills play the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you remember last fall, they actually won. He grew up in Buffalo and one of his best friends was a Steelers fan. He felt a little guilty if he was watching the game, but he thought he could watch most of the game and go check on Susie at the same time. He was just settling in with his Coke and nachos when she called out to him. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Do you need something?" "Oh, on second thought," she said, "can you bring the laptop computer in here so we can watch the church service from earlier today?" He groaned and tried to think of some excuse, but he knew his main job was to take care of her right now. As he went back to the living room to find the laptop, he saw they'd already missed a touchdown. Why couldn't she get sick on a Tuesday night when there's no football? He came back with the laptop, and after a bit of fumbling around and a phone call to one of their kids, they figured out how to watch the virtual church service on YouTube. He positioned his chair beside the bed so he could both watch the video and keep his eye on the TV in the living room down the hall. Bill didn't pay much attention to the church service, frankly, until he saw one of their friends, Nancy, was reading the Bible. She was reading from Philippians chapter 1. And both Bill and Susie thought some of those words were just for them today. For Bill, it was those words about living or dying. When Paul said, "For me, living is Christ and dying is gain, and I do not know which I prefer. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you." Bill looked at Susie. This felt all too personal for them right now. Here Susie was sick, perhaps with that deadly virus, and they'd just been talking about all these end-of-life decisions just a few weeks ago. They'd updated their will and reviewed all of their advanced directives. They agreed they did not want to be kept alive with heroic measures. They would rather be allowed to die peacefully than be on some kind of machine indefinitely. Just as the pastor started preaching his sermon, Susie turned off the volume and said, "Bill, can you bring me my Bible and can you find that passage that she read?" He found her Bible on the dresser and thanks to the table of contents was able to find Philippians. She knew he really wanted to watch the game, so she said, "You go watch your game and I'll see you in the morning." Bill made sure she was comfortable and then went back to the living room. He found he really wasn't into the game, even though his team won. His thoughts were about Susie. She really didn't look good and he was worried. It was one thing to talk about medical procedures you want or don't want, but if Susie really has COVID and goes to the hospital, it might be decision time for him. After the game, Bill went to check on her. She was asleep with her open Bible beside her. He picked it up to climb in next to her when his eyes fell on those words again. "My desire is to part and be with Christ, but to remain is better for you." He hoped that was how she felt. That if she had a choice, she would want to live and stay with him rather than go be with God, her parents, and her sister. He knew she was looking forward to seeing loved ones again. He just hoped she wasn't in any hurry. As he put the Bible back on the nightstand, he felt a need to pray. He got down and knelt by the bed like he did when he was a little boy. He didn't pray often, but he remembered how. He said, "Dear God, please watch over my Susie tonight. Please help her to get better soon. I don't want to lose her. There's so much more we want to do and so much more we should do. I pray that she does not have this COVID disease. Please, Lord, I really need her. I promise I will be a better person if you give us more time together. I will show her how much I love her, and I will do more of those good things she wants us to do together." He got back into bed wishing for the morning to come quickly because it was a rough night. Susie had a fever and her cough got worse. He gave her some cold medicine to help her sleep, and he managed to get a few hours himself. When the phone rang at 9 a.m., he picked it up on the first ring. It was the clinic with the results. "You are negative, sir," the nurse said. "I know I am, but what about my wife?" He held his breath, waiting for the reply. "She's negative too." He couldn't believe his ears. "Are you sure?" he said. "Yes, this test is very accurate. But if her symptoms persist or get worse, call your doctor or go to the hospital." Susie could tell by the smile on his face that it was good news. She was relieved. She too had been thinking about those Bible verses. She knew she would be ready to die when it was time, but she didn't feel ready yet. She had grandchildren to watch grow up, and she wanted to do so much more good in the world. It was as if that good news was medicine in itself, because she started to feel better right away. Bill made them some breakfast, and she felt well enough to sit at the kitchen table and eat together. After breakfast, he made a second pot of coffee. It felt so good to have her back. He had been so stressed out with worry. Now they could get back to their old life as soon as she got over this bad cold or whatever it was. "You really gave me a scare," he said as he spread jam on his toast. "Why were you so worried?" she asked. "I don't know. I guess I really thought you might have COVID. And those Bible verses really got me thinking." Me too, she said, and I want to talk about it. Do we have to? Bill asked. We talked about all that stuff with the lawyer. Susie tilted her head and asked, what do you mean? You know, Bill said, that stuff about whether you want to die or not. Oh, right, there was something about that in the Bible verse, wasn't there? No, she continued. What I remembered was that verse that said, live your life worthy of the gospel. Bill, that's what I want to do. I was so sick last night that I prayed that if God would help me get well, I would really try to do better. I would try to live my life worthy of the gospel. Bill got goosebumps when she said that. They both prayed the same prayer the night before, but for different reasons. He just didn't want to lose her, while she wanted to do more with her life in her remaining years. Bill was a little scared to ask, but he did anyway. So what do you mean by living a life more worthy of the gospel? I don't know exactly, she said, but I know it involves you, the kids, and making a difference in the world. Wow, that sounds like a tall order, Bill said. Where do we start? Bill, Susie interrupted, you just said we. Do you mean we? Are you feeling the same thing? He shared with her what he had prayed the night before, and since his prayers seemed to be answered, he felt he needed to keep up his end of the bargain too. Well, okay then, she said. Let's make a list. Uh-oh, he thought. Her lists usually mean a lot of things for him to do. But this list was not clean out the garage or go shopping. This list started with doing more with family, and then went on to describe how she wanted to start writing to someone in prison. He said he wanted to start helping to build a house with Habitat for Humanity. She thought of serving at the food pantry, and he thought he could sleep over at the church when the homeless people came to stay there. They got a little carried away when she said she wanted to learn to speak Spanish to go help with abandoned children at the border. And he said he thought he would run for town supervisor. As they ran out of ideas, Bill asked, that's a long list, so where do we start? Well, some of those things need to wait until the pandemic is over, but some don't. You know what I want to do first? Learn how to fly fish? Well, Bill asked. He was feeling rather euphoric, and he tried a little joke that fell flat, just like that one just did. She ignored him and said, let's go visit the grandchildren. They had not seen their grandchildren in over half a year. They had done some FaceTime, but it wasn't the same. They lived a few hours away in New Jersey, and they normally saw a lot of each other, but the COVID restrictions made them want to be super careful for themselves and for the kids. Do you think we should? What will the kids think? Bill asked. Susie said, well, let's ask them. They called their son and told him about how sick Susie had been and how they had been relieved to get negative COVID tests. And we have a new lease on life, Susie said. We don't want to waste another moment. And the first thing we want to do is hug our grandchildren. Even if we have to do it through some plastic wall, Susie said, we're coming. Don't worry, Greg said. We'll come there. The kids have been asking when they could see you too. We'll figure something out. Maybe we can come on Saturday if you're feeling up to it. Of course I will, Susie said. The days went slowly that week as they looked forward to the weekend, but each day Susie felt better. She got another COVID test just to be sure, and it was still negative. There was good news on the TV of successful results with the new vaccines. Things were really starting to look up. When Saturday came, Susie sat by the living room window watching for the kids' car. When it pulled up, she called Bill. They put on their masks and went outside to meet them. Their two grandchildren each had what looked like a white sheet in their arms. As they ran up to meet them, their granddaughter Olivia yelled, "Close your eyes, Grandma and Grandpa." Susie did, but Bill was peeking as the kids threw a sheet over them and gave them a big hug. Bill enjoyed the hug immensely, but he couldn't help notice that the sheet smelled strongly of Lysol. When the kids stepped back from the long hugs, they laughed and laughed. "What's so funny?" Bill said. "You look like ghosts," Jacob screamed with delight. Bill raised his arms and stumbled toward the kids like a zombie. After lots of laughter and picture-taking, they took off the sheets and told everyone to go around to the backyard where they would have lunch. The kids took off running and their parents followed them. Bill and Susie looked at each other and hugged. "I'm glad you're not a real ghost yet," Bill said. They both laughed as they took hands to join their family for that long overdue celebration of birthdays and other milestones all wrapped up into one. As they joined the family celebration, albeit from a safe social distance, Susie whispered a prayer of thanks. She was grateful for her new lease on life. When she looked at Bill, she knew he was thinking the same thing. They weren't going to forget the other things on their list, but this was a great place to start. This was a life worthy of the gospel of love. Love for God, love for family, love for others, love for life. The end of our story for this year. Amen.